we have such a sense of ourselves as Americans, as freedom-loving people, and we would defend it to the last. I don't see that that's a universal.
Well, I'm afraid you're right in terms of the acquiescence. And, you know, I was in the Senate very proudly representing New York for 8 years. There are still people on the Republican side I served with there. I don't talk to them, but my former Democratic colleagues report to me. They go into the cloakroom, they're in the hallway.
But aren't you sick about hearing about what they say in the cloakrooms?
I am really sick of it. I'm very sick of it because they are betraying the kind of weakness that is, you know, undermining of a great country and our institutions because they won't stand up to them unless they're on their way out. Why not?
Are these jobs so great that you can't?
For some people, they are. So for some people, it's simply staying in power, being able to, feel like they are important. For some people, it's literal threats. You know, the only person I know who spoke publicly about this was Lisa Murkowski. Mm-hmm. And basically, if you are threatened the way some of these people are threatened and their families are threatened, and you think you may be rationalizing, but you think, well, I can try to rein in more if I stay on the inside, so I can be against, but I can't be against too much. That's one thing. But the people who are in positions of great economic power, like the tech companies and other, large businesses, have been so disappointing in the way that they have, basically aligned themselves with Trump policies, and in large measure, I guess, because they think, quote, it's good for their business. And what I have said privately and publicly is you are making a grave mistake, because you may think it's good for your business today, but somebody who offers a bigger bribe, because make no mistake, these transactional deals they're making are nothing but bribes. You support me or you don't get this contract. You do support me, you're going to get that contract. These are bribes. That is in the Constitution as an impeachable offense. And so part of what I see happening is men, and they're all men, basically convincing themselves they have to do this for the business, but what they're not appreciating is that this kind of unchecked, unaccountable power can turn and bite them just as easily. You saw it. You saw it in Russia. You saw the transition from the collapse of the Soviet Union, and you saw, the oligarchs being formed, the privatization. But then when Putin came along, it was, I want 5%. No, I now want 25%. I want 50%. And that's why people say he's the richest man in the world, because he's basically...
I must say, he loves you. I have never seen somebody speak so harshly of anyone as to watch Putin speaking about Hillary Clinton.
Well, I wear it as a badge of honor, but it did help... contrary to what you hear from Donald Trump, he did help Donald Trump win, and partly because he knew what kind of leader I would be compared to, Donald, whom he knew would not.
You have a question from the audience. Would you still defend the Democratic strategy, the Democratic Party strategy of trying to capture the center when it has failed to repel Donald Trump 2 separate times? It feels as though the only thing Democrats agree on is being anti-Trump.
Well, I think this year anti-Trump may work. So I'm not sure this year is the right time to try to answer that question. But also, if you look at where we have to win, the Electoral College is not our friend. And it certainly is not the Democratic Party's friend. And so when you are planning a national campaign, as opposed to a congressional or state-by-state Senate campaign, you have to try to figure out how you're going to win those independent voters, or you're not going to win. You're not going to win the Electoral College. You can run up your margins. Remember, I beat him by nearly 3 million votes because I ran up my margin in New York and Illinois and California and all, it was great. So I won the popular vote and lost the election. And so when people say to me, just you don't need to try to appeal, well, go to Wisconsin, go to Michigan, go to Pennsylvania, and try to look at how Josh Shapiro wins or Gretchen Whitmer wins. They win by appealing broadly, not narrowly. And so it's frustrating, and I know it's frustrating because all of this is so self-evident to us about what kind of government we should have, what kind of leaders we should have, what kind of candidates we should elect. But it's a big country out there.
I want to ask you two quick questions about the law, and this is a beautifully crafted one. On a scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you about being locked up?
Well, it's not for lack of trying that I'm not, that they continue to, not only go after me, but go after all kinds of, people that Trump considers his, quote, enemies. I'm not worried about it if the law matters and if the facts matter. I have nothing to worry about. And what I've been slightly reassured about in the last couple of months is the way the courts are actually enforcing their orders. So the name is off the Kennedy Center. The $1.776 billion fund is enjoined. And so there is finally the pushback. Our big problem has been the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has enabled and approved so much of what he's done on the so-called shadow docket. And that is what has given him the permission to go forward with a lot of the things that he has pursued without there being yet any kind of final adjudication. So when I think about the law, personally, I'm not that worried for myself, but I do see him continuing to unleash his private law firm, which used to be called the Justice Department, against people and forcing them to be investigated, spend money, everything to just put them, at risk. So, yeah, I do think that he is going to continue to do that, and we, unfortunately, are going to have to continue to fight back.
Has John Roberts, in particular, as Chief Justice, failed the law?
I voted against him as a senator. I met with him. I voted against Alito, and Alito was a much more obvious movement conservative, a results-oriented judge. And so I had no doubt about what he would do, and I gave a speech on the floor. John Roberts, though, as I looked into his past, when he clerked for Justice Rehnquist, he wrote a memo about reversing the Voting Rights Act back in the 1980s. So he has been a known commodity to some of us who paid attention for some time, but he comes across as more affable, a kind of country club person that you would have a nice dinner with. But make no mistake about it, he led the charge against the Voting Rights Act. He led the charge against campaign finance reform. He has been on the side of the, sort of federalist agenda since he was a young lawyer, a young law clerk. And this is his court. And I think they have concluded, led by him, the majority certainly, that their job is to turn the clock back as much as possible on the 20th century. They believe in almost the height of corporate power. They believe in, the role that corporations should play in our politics and basically undisclosed, unlimited money, plus then things like the Voting Rights Act, which they view as, in the way they describe it, unnecessary and a, quote, colorblind society that's gotten beyond race. I don't know where they live. I don't know who they talk to. I don't understand it, but that is their stated view. But it's really, you know, I went to law school with Clarence Thomas, and so.
Did you know him?
What?
Did you know him?
Of course I did.
And what was he like then?
He was kind of a guy with a grudge. He had a grudge.
Did you ever figure out what the grudge was?
I think again, I can't tell you all the reasons why I think that, because I don't know enough about him, but I think he had a view that he was being treated unfairly in life, and, you know, when he got out of law school, he couldn't really get a great job, and I just feel like for some reason, you know, he began to think that life would have been better. I don't know how he believes this, without all of these laws and regulations. And so he is what he is. And he just gave a speech about, for the 250th commemoration, I think at Texas or somewhere. He gave a speech basically saying that, you know, the progressive movement had destroyed America and it needed to be reined in.
Secretary Clinton, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.